Hello and welcome to Exchanges for another week. Greatness Doesn't Wait. That is the title of the new book by my next guest here on Exchanges in Jason Dunn. If you don't know who he is, Jason is an endurance ultra athlete and he has been doing ultra marathons, ultra triathlons and also Ironman triathlons across the globe for the last 30 years and is still doing them even today. But that's not just what he does. It's all about understanding how the processes and the future planning that you put in today not just builds you for ultra marathons and ultra competitive events like he does, but also in business and economics. He runs his own financial services firm and he's built that from the ground up with the same mantra and tricks that he did to actually do the ultra triathlons that he's done. Before we get into Jason, don't forget we are now sponsored by MyTrade. MyTrade is a global CFD and exchange traded funds provider based here right in Melbourne. It has been going on now for the last 30 years. Please go and have a look at MyTrade if you can. But before we go any further and talk all about Jason's future, don't forget also the big thing that we need to remind ourselves is mindset. And mindset is the core part of what you're about to hear from Jason. So without any further ado, here's this week's Exchanges with Jason Dunn. Jason Dunn, welcome to Exchanges. You have had an incredible career, but more so an incredible life with regards to how you went from being, that goal-orientated teenager chasing, sport's biggest dream with regards to, for you, was obviously going into football, soccer, but then also realizing that you can't. Take me through your arc. Take me through your particularly that first part of your life where you are young, you're told that you can be amazing, doesn't happen, but then you have to deal with the fallout, hitting your 20s where, you do have to really, really find yourself and work out that you are somewhat, you and only, to then your 30s and 40s and where you are now in your 60s, turning into an elite iron person athlete that has gone a full circle in what you do.
Okay. All right, I'll try and be succinct as I can. It's a lot of days in 62 years, Evans. So,
yeah.
Yes. And look, thank you for that very kind introduction. Yeah, I grew up with a dream. Every boy and probably lots of girls in the UK and Europe, the number one goal, if you like, or dream is to play professional football. Okay. And, we right now as a country, we can feel the kind of unity and the spirit and, of the World Cup. That's just a fraction, that is, to some degree, that's every single day in the UK and lots of parts of Europe because football is life. Football is more than life. And, people, they pin their hopes and their dreams and, it's their one thing, it's their special thing. So as a boy, that was my special thing. I played 4 games a week. At the age of, I was 12, 13 or 14, I was already playing 4 games a week. And it was the thing I dreamed of the most, and I finally got my opportunity at the age of 15. It wasn't the top tier. So the first division back then, it was the second division. It was a club on the South Coast and it was a 2-hour train ride. So I was 15, had an offer for an apprenticeship. It was a 2-hour train ride at least there and a 2-hour train ride back just to go to training. So it was just untenable. It was completely unrealistic. And that was my one shot. And I had to make a decision. And I'd been brought up very much around having a fairly stoic mindset and about competing and a whole bunch of other things. So to give it up and to sort of make a decision with my head, not my heart, was a very tough thing to do. But that's exactly what I did. And completed my school studies, moved to Australia when I was 17. I had a pretty interesting year, 17, 18. I was my first really, really, really serious accident. So I was that close to death in a car accident. And I won't describe what happened, but I lost lots of teeth and they were coming through my face and my jawbone was coming through my face and so on and fractured my skull. And so I, went about life, as you say, and I just focused on trying to do the things that we're brought up to do, but I could feel the regret. And I worked hard. I was taught to, that was a very basic work ethic was, you work hard at everything that you do, you save hard. And so that's what I did. But I also took the path of, least resistance to instant gratification sometimes. And that was, addictions and, whether it was alcohol or cigarettes or probably a couple of few other things.
Hmm.
And I would sort of I'd jump between that, working really hard and, you know, path of least resistance, instant gratification. And my regret was starting to snowball, and I would have too many drinks, at a work function or going out with mates or whatever. And I would say I could have been a professional soccer player as though it was a badge of honor. And, perhaps that was ego as well. And, it wasn't. It wasn't a bad. The irony of that is, it was like saying, almost boasting, I could have been, I was talented. But on the other hand, I made a decision. I made a logical decision. I didn't take a risk. I didn't throw everything into it and have the courage. And so that regret snowballed till I got to the point where I would look in the mirror and go, who are you? You're telling people one thing, but you're not showing up to be who you're purporting to be. And that regret was enormous. And so there came a day, I'd been searching for years, raising family, doing the right thing, investing. And by the way, I bought two properties when I was 18 in Sydney. I had no money. I think I had a 10% deposit. So I did take a risk there. But look, I was searching, I was searching for something just for me. And I knew that I was living so far below my potential. That was what really, really hurt. And so one day, a friend of mine at work, at a bank, said, "Hey, Jace, we're going to do a corporate triathlon. We want you to be the third person. Are you in?" I didn't even really know what a triathlon was, so he described it. I went, "Yeah, okay, I'm in. That sounds like fun." And I'm thinking in my head, "Yeah, I can run the 3Ks, even though I smoke a pack a day, and I can do 3Ks. I can train for that, probably nail that." So off I went. A couple of weeks later, we caught up. And Rob said, "How are you going with the training?" I said, "Yeah, it's going great. I'm going to nail the 3K, I think, pretty confidently." And he looked at me and said, "Yeah, well, what about the swimming and the cycling?" And I just went, a blood drain from my face. I felt sick in the stomach. So what do you mean? What do you mean swimming? I said, "Well, we've all got to do the whole thing." I said, "Mate, I thought I was just going to do the run." He said, "No, no, no." And I felt it was a very confronting moment for me. But in that moment, and so I had a deep fear of drowning. Grew up in the UK, couldn't swim. I had deep fear of drowning. It would be something I'd have recurring nightmares about. That's how deep this fear was. And I could swim maybe across a pool to save my life, for 25-meter across it, not with my head
Hmm.
underwater. And so I just kind of knew in that moment that I didn't recognize absolutely why, but I knew this was really important not to walk away from. So off I went, started to work out how I could train, put a plan in place. And, I went to the swimming pool a couple of days later in Brizzy, 6 o'clock in the evening, it was dark, and I sat outside and left the car running. For 20 minutes, I had this fight with, you know, the voice of reason and the person that I wanted to be. And this one was trying to say, "It's easier, go home, this is scary, you don't have to do this. Maybe you can do it in a few days, give it a go then." And this war raged. And after 20 minutes, I just finally turned the car off and I just said to myself, "We're doing this. We're going to do it." And I swam 25 meters really badly, held onto the side of the pool, sucking the oxygen in, pretty embarrassed. And then, it took me 3 or 4 minutes and I swam the other 25 meters back and spat some water out. And, I just felt this spark of, wow, I could probably give this a go. Maybe I can do this. And so I built a plan, and we'll talk about how planning fits in with every aspect of life and
Hmm.
how you plan backwards from, through your purpose and huge goals to break it down to what you need to get up to do today. So it doesn't become psychologically and emotionally overwhelming. So, you really simplify it. And that's what I did. And, I rocked up on race day. Boldly, probably ego, stood on the beach at Noosa, in the tidal river. I stood at the front thinking, I'm a pretty fast runner. I'm gonna go in there and away I go. So I did. I ran in. I was ahead of everyone. And by the time I got to the 50-meter buoy to sort of turn left in the river, um, everyone had swum over me. and I was spluttering, turning
Can I
over.
just sort of, because what you're talking about there is clearly where you've gone to with your book, and we'll come to your book as well.
Yep.
But this is clearly all the triggers that led you to talk about the whole concept, which is your title of your
Absolutely.
book, which is that greatness doesn't care.
Yeah.
And on that, you also said something just before, also that is clearly a question I also want to ask you is about Stoicism, right? So Stoicism is becoming something that was, seen in the 70s, 80s, 90s as just sort of inbuilt with how people went about it. It's gone out of fashion. It was seen as something, again, people, saw it as not just a Stoicism, but actually as sort of a negative. But it's making a big, big comeback because it's also around that whole idea of bringing it back to self, understanding that there will be adversity, and adversity is something that
Indeed
can be a motivating thing rather than a demotivating thing.
Yep.
So can you go through how clearly this is what's got you there, is that if you do want to take that step, it does come down to you, and it comes down to your planning and where Stoicism fits into it. When did all that sort of spark and trigger come? Because clearly it's on this race, but it was more than that as well, right?
Okay, so John, let me just finish that for a couple of minutes, because that will absolutely flow in, if that's okay.
Yeah, go for it.
So I was dead set last out of the swim, but I didn't die, which was my greatest fear. I felt a bit of embarrassment, hopped on the bike, did the run, and I went from dead set last 150th place to 10th place, and I just felt this euphoria. I knew that I could do this. I'd proved to myself that I could face my fears, have the courage, and I could achieve something. So for a couple of weeks, I searched around. I just wanted more. I knew I wanted more. And I watched sitting there having coffee and a cigarette, and I watched the Wide World of Sports showing the Hawaii Ironman, which was a novelty, this Herculean event. Was a novelty, this legendary event. It was kind of a novelty, but now it's just legendary. And I watched it, and I was just so captivated that I knew this was for me. So each leg would be 15, 16 times longer than what I'd just done. And I had to qualify an Ironman and go fast enough, in my age group to qualify for Hawaii. So I set Hawaii as my goal, and in 5 years. So that was my goal. But it dawned on me fairly quickly. And, there's a sequence here of the 14 steps to greatness, defining what greatness is. And I'll talk about that in a sec. But then there's purpose. So what I needed to change, I needed to evolve this to a purpose, not a goal, because most people set goals, and they reach the goal, and then they go, oh, what am I going to do next? It's a goal that you ticked off. So purpose is the antidote to fear, to many things in life. So you have to find your purpose. So my purpose became highly emotional and very meaningful. My purpose was to go and find out what I actually was, to prove to myself what I was capable of doing, how far I could push myself, and what I should accomplish. So that kind of became my purpose. And from there, I then had to find the courage. So courage is the second step, and then the third is mindset, and the fourth is planning, and then the fifth is discipline. So they're kind of the really big 5 critical ones. So firstly, you've got to go back and find your purpose, whatever it is. It's not a goal, and I can come back to that in a sec. But this kind of so if we go to discipline, which is at the very heart and soul, that's the bedrock of Stoicism. And Ryan Holiday is the one, the one person on this planet that's brought Stoicism to the world. I love his books. Anyone that hasn't read them, courage takes work. And wisdom takes work. Courage is calling. They are brilliant, absolutely fabulous books, and they've inspired and created lots of wisdom for me. So discipline, but the Stoics believe that discipline is the alignment of wisdom and action. Wisdom, action. So you can do things, but if you're not doing the right things, they will not take you. They will not enable you to become the person that you're meant to be, or you want to be, or you need to be, or even achieve or accomplish something, because you might be doing a bunch of the wrong things. So that's really important is the wisdom. And the wisdom comes from planning. So whatever it is you do in life, you must plan. And you got to plan as in write a plan down to bring a very big goal or a life achievement back to today. So, I've set goals that are 5 or 10 years away. I've always done that. And I just need the confidence and the belief. So belief is another key step of greatness. Belief is creating the evidence that backs up that you are capable of doing this, and you do it gradually. So mindset. I just survived a 300-meter swim, a 12K bike ride, and a 3K run. And now I'm planning to do a 3.8K ocean swim, a 180K bike, and a 42K marathon. And I'm planning to do it faster than most people in my age group in the world to get to the world championships. So to create the belief and the confidence and the structure to know, have the wisdom to know what to do, you must have a plan. And the plan must gradually work back to where you are today. And what that does is it removes the debilitation that you get sometimes. So say you're 3 weeks into trying to achieve something that's a year away, and that's so far away, and today it feels just really hard, that becomes debilitating and demoralizing. So you have to put this thing away and you have to go, what is it I need to get up and do today? So Stoicism is is that discipline. It's the wisdom to know what action to take, and then the overlay of is telling yourself and having the confidence, no matter how I feel today, what's happening today, what the weather's like, what's happened in life, all the external stuff, emotionally how I'm feeling, is just do what you need to do today because tomorrow may be completely different. It will be better. But if you have that discipline, which is showing up when you don't feel like doing something, and my favorite mantra that I live by every day, well, now it's intuitive, but was to be truly successful in life, you must first do what you don't want to do when you don't want to do it until you do. It's actually very similar to a David Goggins quote, and I know David's brother really well, and he called me the refined David Goggins, which is pretty cool. But it's showing up because you have the wisdom to know that what you're supposed to do today will take you anywhere that you want to go.
Mm-hmm.
And so you do it. So if I can give you an example, hey, look, I've done some tough things. There are people that have done tougher. I'm not up here. I don't consider there's people who do far more than I do. But I've been hospitalized 35 times. I've broken way more than 40 bones. I've had life-threatening conditions. I've had, 4 near-death accidents. I've been hit by trucks. You name it, it's happened to me. And the reason in my first book, I called my first book Unlimited, and it wasn't because that wasn't about, hey, I think I'm unlimited. It was about you can develop the third step, which is your mindset, which controls everything. You can create a belief that you are not limited, a belief that the only time I'm going to be limited is when I tell myself I'm limited. You can expand your mind to believe that if you keep putting in today and the next day and the next day, you can achieve anything. You can achieve truly meaningful things.
Because that brings a question then around resilience versus inverted commas. And I don't want to use this word, but it needs to be sort of part of recklessness, right? So
Yeah.
What you're showing, even with the fact that you ended up in hospital 35 times, that your resilience and your understanding of your own body, your understanding of your own wisdom, and therefore your direction allowed you to go, well, this is just part of the process, and you can push through it.
It is.
How does resilience go into it in terms of, because this I think into the world that I see right now, whether it's through economics, whether through behavioralism, what have you, is resilience is very much lacking. I think is probably a right term. I know that's a harsh term, but it's a right term in people's mindsets in terms of what's doing.
It's scarce.
How do you develop that?
Well, it's scarce, and we played a part in it. I mean, I'm obviously a father and and a grandfather, and so I've been around for a while. I grew up in a different times. The way I was brought up is quite different to now. We want the best for our families and for our kids, and sometimes that's not the best. Making them comfortable, making them always feel safe, not getting them to feel uncomfortable is what we do because we want them to have a good life. But you've got to have struggle. And so resilience is step 6, by the way. Thank you for picking them all out. You're probably just going to get them all out for me, Evan. resilience. So there's a very well-known saying that people, say often, which is, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Um,
Mm.
I think it's just rubbish. That's because people determine stronger as maybe being harder. And harder doesn't make you, that's not resilience. Resilience is recognizing from experience that the thing that's happening to you now will pass and that you can overcome the thing that's happening to you, and that confidence to know that you will get to somewhere else. It's a positive mindset. Mindset is about, and resilience is mindset. It's what you tell yourself you can and can't do. It's the ability to be able to not dwell on things, to influence them quickly and move on quickly. It doesn't mean to say you can't grieve and you can't be sad or you can't whatever, but it's how you learn, how you say to yourself, I learned from this, I'll change this, or I'll be aware of this next time. But this is just part of what I actually have to do. This is necessary. And if I can keep going, if that's okay. So struggle, and this is a lot about, again, mindset, resilience. I realized that struggle and failure are absolutely, not only are they inevitable, because if you're going to try, if you're going to be better than you were yesterday, you're going to face some barriers. You're going to push yourself a little bit. I mean, you don't have to do the stuff that I do, but it's going to test you, which means if you want to become more and you want to grow and be better than yesterday and you want to accomplish significant, meaningful things, you're going to struggle and you're going to fail. If you do, so I term greatness is what greatness is only meaningful to you. It's not comparison. We'll talk about comparison as well, but it's what's absolutely meaningful to you. And greatness is a reflection of the amount of struggle that you push through, the struggle that you overcome to accomplish something that's meaningful. That's as simple as that. That is greatness. So, it's not comparison. And so you can, in the moment, I actually taught myself not only, so accept the struggle and accept that failure are inevitable. So you're not surprised. It doesn't sort of knock you out for weeks or months trying to work out to do. You go, this is going to happen. It's going to happen. So I'm going to accept it. So what do I do with it when it happens? So I would, in our minds, when we're doing something, let me give you an example. Every week, at least once a week, I would run up and down one hill for 6 hours. 1.5 up, 1.5 down. It was 35, 38 degrees. Didn't matter. It was my training. I would do it alone because it created mental stillness, which is another key step of greatness. A lot of time to think. But if you do something that's really tough and repetitive, and you can discipline yourself to do that, you can do anything. So let's say you're 4 repeats up into a 20 repeats up this hill, and it's already feeling difficult because you've run 150 Ks during the week and you've worked full time as a CEO. It's challenging. And so that voice of reason comes in and says, hey, this is difficult, like it's hot, you come back into you can skip today's session. But I know that if I do that once, then I let that voice of reason in. And if I do it again, that will become me. That will become my identity. And I will, I'll put things off. Anyway, so when that paralyzing thought comes in that says, oh, you've only done 4 repeats, you've got 16 to go, you're going to be out here for another 4.5 hours, is how do you, and that's the same in business and life, how do you wrap your mind around that? So when the struggle started to happen, I would say to myself, you actually need, if you're not struggling, you're not going to find your greatness. So this is necessary. This is a good thing. Recognize this as the opportunity to become the best that you can be. It's as simple as that. And it's the ability to be able for you to influence your mindset quickly in the moment so you do not spend time dwelling on issues. You're already in solution mode.
Because you talked then just about comparison, because this also comes into the mindset. And one of the things that you say is that comparison is quietly destroying confidence, motivation, and happiness.
Yeah.
And, in business, sport,
yeah,
they are literally built on rankings and league tables.
Yeah.
How do you deal with being competing, but without comparing?
So the competition is yourself. And sorry, I did miss a point. I didn't want to make this point about Stoicism and discipline. So again, central to the Stoic philosophy is that you cannot change or master the world until you can change externally, until you can do that internally. So we focus everything on results and outcomes and the rest of the world, but it's only us. It is self mastery. That's discipline, is self mastery. So um, the only competition is yourself, because greatness is doing something that is so purposeful. You overcome a whole bunch of things and you prevail. And you know what? Even if you don't get to where you would hope to be, if you've given it your best shot, it's meaningful because you feel good about yourself. So it's just, you just gotta, you just kind of gotta, give it your best shot. That makes sense. But, to
Yeah,
your
it
point,
does.
your point about, sorry, can you just go back to the
So
point
what I was
about,
going to, because obviously one of your things is comparison,
yeah,
right? So you
yep,
talk about the
absolutely.
fact
Yep.
that the
Yep.
comparison is that thing around confidence, motivation, and happiness.
Yep.
Particularly, I think the comparison question that you're putting in your book, and
Yeah.
clearly what you've spoken about already,
Yep.
is the rise and rise of
Yep.
social media. The ability to compare yourself to the downside
Yep.
is always very easy.
Yep.
But you talk about it from the point of view that the competition's with yourself,
It is.
not with the
Yep.
comparison.
Yep.
And particularly, how is that mindset to get around? Because this thing is deadly, and I'm holding up my phone in terms of that ability to get away from comparing to what is not part of your program. Clearly, that's what you talk about.
Yeah,
It's
people
not
are showing
part
you your
of your
highlights. People are showing you the best parts of their life, the things they want to see, because they're externalizing that. Because we all want to show the best things, but people are very structured about that. And that's about, I want the world to see who I am or my life or whatever, because I need that validation. And so people do that all the time, particularly in fitness aspirations. People compare their times, and everyone posts, this is my Strava thing for 10K or whatever. And so I flip it completely around and say it matters not, because it's relevant. And if you're a 45-year-old and your purpose is not to run a 10K, sorry, your goal is, but your purpose is, I actually want to feel great and fit and energized and the best I felt in my life. And I want to live a long life. I want to be able to do this for the kids and grandkids and whatever. That's a purpose. That's a powerful purpose. So what someone else does is irrelevant, because all that will do is create negativity in your own mind about where you're at. Now, if you're a 45-year-old starting out, you're not going to be able to compete with me at 45, and you're not going to be able to compete with a world champion or whoever else. So that actually becomes a very negative, very, very negative, is that comparison. So people, all that matters is, if you couldn't run 3K, for lots of your life until, up until 2 or 3 weeks ago, running 3K on your way to somewhere else is greatness. That's all that's relevant. And people focus on outputs and not inputs. We do this in business and sales all the time. I mean, I've been in the financial world for 35 years. I wasn't for 35 years. And everything's about comparison. We measure every widget, leaderboard. And so I would tell my teams, that's important. But if you want to change an outcome, it's going to take you the way somebody in your team, and you want to help and coach them, forget results, because it's going to take 4 months to change the outcomes. It takes a long time to build a pipeline. It's inputs, and that is life. It's getting up every day, and the inputs, all the rest will take care of itself. You have the discipline aligned to your plan with wisdom, and you keep doing the inputs. You will get there.
It's fascinating when you talk about that, because I did want to come to, you've also built a very successful career. You were a CEO of a financial services firm. We worked in 35 years of that. Can I pick you up on that point? Because that was something that I've always experienced, in terms of the output they want it today. But as you've just put in there, the input is going to take days, weeks, months, possibly years to do the change.
Yep.
Where do we need to sort of, again, take the comparison point away from, we are X% down on this time last year, or we are X% away from budget? Whereas realistically, what you're arguing is, all executive suite, middle suite, sport, finance,
Yep.
business, etc.
Yep.
is no. The evaluation is on the input; it's not on the output.
So yeah, so we find ourselves in that scenario because we're not focusing on the things that make a difference, the inputs. If you're running, it's about how you train. It's about, so we focus. There comes a point culturally where that there has to be a line in the sand, and you have to accept that, right? Instead of result, we're going to absolutely go back to what is it that will change the outcome, and be realistic about the amount of time it's going to take to change that outcome, and then that becomes our practice. And that is, again, you've got to have a plan and to understand how long it's going to take your pipeline. And I use a tactical plan, which is a 90-day high performance rolling high performance plan, which, there might be 30 of those to get me to my huge goal, but it keeps me on track. And what it does is it says, well, what are the smaller milestones to build up? And how long is it going to take to do that? And what's realistic? Because if you set yourself something completely unrealistic, you're going to fail. You're going to become despondent. You might be a long way from it. So planning strategically and tactically is absolutely essential. And can I just go back to quickly just to the thing about comparison, because it's probably pretty topical. Um, Everyone loves the World Cup. Well, most people do. Everyone loves Norway, the Vikings. Okay. Do you know in Norway, it's the law is that until the age of 13, there are no league tables, no official scores, no publications, no competition in sport.
Mm-hmm.
In sport, and this is a kind of the last kind of decade or so, and they just so kids don't feel pressured. They go and play for the pure enjoyment. They get a sense of playing with their team around them under pressure. And look what they've achieved. In Ironman, uh, Ironman has been dominated for many years by three Norwegians. Three Norwegians. Like Norway is hardly conducive to having a great climate to even train. But I would argue the pro Ironman athletes are the greatest athletes on the planet. They are just, you see them up close, they are just absolutely phenomenal. They didn't produce one, they produced the top three. The top three.
So what is it? What is it? Do you think being around that world, knowing that world, having been in it for 35 years, and reaching to that upper echelon, having done the the Ironman challenges in Hawaii, getting into the top 10, what are you seeing in their abilities and their practices that have got them to have the top three in the world? Because it's clearly something. Is it a culture? Is it a
is the
mindset?
Culture. It is a culture. It is a national identity and culture. And we can learn so much from those kind of Nordic countries. I saw a survey the other day. Five of the top 6 happiest countries in the world: Norway, Sweden, Iceland. You look at their social policy. Norway. In Norway, if you're eligible, that the government will purchase 1,000 copies of your book for school and libraries. They will purchase because they want kids to read physical books, and adults as well. Their culture is just remarkable.
Because there's a stoicism to it as well, I would argue, in terms of if you look at how they are structured in terms of what they do.
Absolutely.
Although, traditionally it's described as a sort of a more feminism culture on some of the old sort of psychological scales, it's not that. What you're saying is they understand team, they understand confidence, they understand planning, they understand
community,
that as a culture, they go and do things and get on with it. I mean, you can see that getting back to your World Cup experience, talk about the Norway team. You watch how they play. They're not necessarily the most gifted, although they've got an incredibly gifted player in Harling, but they play as a unit to the best of their ability.
They do.
Is that probably, again, the culture that you're talking about?
Absolutely. It is absolutely. We get so consumed. Hey, I was brought up to win. I was brought up to be competitive. I was brought up with ego. And it's taken me decades to unwind that. Decades. And so If I, some of the other, the biggest learning for me in the what I love is when you open your mind and you listen carefully and and you just completely open, is you learn so much. I've learned more in the last 3 or 4 years than probably, in the rest of my 60 odd years. And for me, vulnerability is my greatest period of growth in the last 3 or 4 years because I've learned a lot of tough things in life, some of which I don't even share in my books, because they involve other people. But I've done so many tough things. You become tough, and you think as a leader, what people want to see is confidence. You're in control, and a whole bunch of other stuff, the executive stuff. And so that's what that's what you do, and you just become tough. But they want to see some vulnerability. They want you to go, oh, I got that wrong. I stuffed that up. Sorry. They want you to, they want their input. That they want you, vulnerability is a very, very powerful thing for growth as a person. And, I can't change it now, but, I don't wish, but I'm glad I found vulnerability.
That's an interesting point. I'm going to go a bit further on you on with that one because particularly C-suite, particularly politics
Yeah.
is another one for it, particularly, listed company CEOs, that admission of vulnerability, because then a vulnerability is going to be an admission of a mistake, right?
Yep.
Where do we need to change that? Because it's not just from the individual, it's clearly from a society to accept mistake. Because if we keep expecting our politicians never to make a mistake, or we continue to expect our, people of leadership never to make a mistake, they can't learn from the vulnerabilities you're talking about. What is in your learnings and understandings that will require us to accept vulnerability, but also society accepting that mistakes are part and parcel of how we grow?
Yeah, well, again, I grew up, the way I was brought up, um, it wasn't about admitting, wasn't about, that vulnerability was just being soft. And I've lived with that, trying to change that paradigm for a very, very long time. I think we're heading in the right direction. There are amazing authors like Brene Brown and so on that, talk about the power of, vulnerability. I just think I think you just become a much better human, regardless of anything else. Yeah, and if you read Ryan Holiday's "Wisdom Takes Work," um, you will realize, it will absolutely come to you that, growth is about accepting, what you don't know. It's about asking questions. And I never got that I used to run lots of team workshops and conferences and stuff like that. And, it occurred to me one day, maybe 18 or 19 years ago, that the people I respected most were actually the people that admitted they didn't know something. When I say admitted, they constantly asked questions because they were curious. It was the people that sat there and said nothing because they were afraid, or they wanted everyone to think that they knew stuff or whatever. They didn't want to be vulnerable. They actually never learned anything because they just didn't accept that they didn't know. And so that was a really important lesson for me. But vulnerability is just about becoming better. Vulnerability is, you actually, when you're vulnerable, you become closer to being the person that you really are. It's when you're actually trying to externalize, a different facade, that you're actually not being you. And I think that's what it is in life, whether it's people around you, whether it's, as a leader. People respect vulnerability. People respect when someone has the courage to go, you know what? I got it wrong and I am sorry. And you know what? I will get better at that next time. And I can feel that evolution in me actually happening. And no matter what it is, you just get quicker to, you know, internal reflection. And then, you go again, self mastery, and you go, I stuffed it up. I didn't get that right. Sorry, I didn't listen to you. I will change that next time. I will become better.
I can't believe we've gone actually over time, so I need to sort of
Sorry,
get you into my final
happen.
question.
Yeah.
No, it's just been incredible, and that's why I can't wait to see your answer to my final question, which is, Jason Dunn, if you're in charge for just one day, what would you do?
Okay, so I'm a work in progress constantly, and that's what I love because there's so much more. I never believed all of this 5 years ago, with all this happening to me in my life, and I writing books to help people on the other side of the world. Um, all I need to do is be in charge of myself. Because you can't be in charge of anything or change anything until you're in charge, until you master yourself, until you become the person you're supposed to be. So all I can do is keep becoming better and mastering myself and keep helping other people and keep changing externally. And that would be my advice. My biggest piece of advice is work on yourself, master yourself, and you can change anything and everything. You can do anything in this world, but it's gotta be you. Don't look for the answers elsewhere. Don't look for someone to do something for you. Don't expect for politicians to change the world. Change yourself and you can change the world.
Jason Dunn, that is a fantastic way to end. Good luck with the book. Congratulations on Greatness Doesn't Care. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Can I hold it up?
You certainly can. There it is there. If you are watching on YouTube, please go and have a look. And it's a great, great read. Congratulations. And it's been an absolute pleasure having you on Exchanges.
Evan, pleasure's mine, mate. Thank you.
Big thank you to Jason and to you out there for listening, watching, and everything in between. It was an absolute pleasure to have him on. Please go and have a look at his book. It is to go into just what he does and the processes that he takes to do the kind of ultra events that he leads to, but also a discipline that it creates in all aspects of your life. As always, if you have, please don't forget to subscribe, like, do whatever you need to do in whatever medium you're listening to us. The more we can get, the more subscribers we can get. We do have an email. It's exchanges@evanlucas.com.au. Please send in any information that you need. We'd love to get any guests that you think about as well on the podcast. But until next week, thank you again for listening.